I'm David from Levika Photography, and today I want to talk to you guys about the Sony 35mm f1.8 optical steady shot lens. I've had this now for about 6 weeks, and it's a very unusual lens. And you guys need to watch the entire review because I go into a lot of detail about what it's good for and what it's not. But anyway, really quick, just kind of a rundown. I don't understand the optical design of this lens. This is very unusual. The lens hood itself folds backwards, and it's very portable and tidy. 49mm front threads. The rear element is very easy to access, very easy to clean. The build quality is exceptional. The autofocus, just so you guys understand the autofocus on these lenses, the faster of a lens that you get from f2.8 to f1.8 creates a longer draw in the autofocus. So the farther it has to go to actually focus in. So all the way open, it has a tendency to focus in slowly on what you're actually looking at, but on the camera, if you have the focus speed turned up to high, it doesn't really seem to affect it at all. I couldn't tell the difference. But you know, it's a smooth focus. So you know, you're going to discover this is very good for video. And you know, your options for this kind of lens really comes down to 4 lenses that are out on the market. You have the 35mm f1.8 right here, and then we've got the Sigma 30mm f2.8 DN art lens, which I also have. That I actually really enjoy that lens. And then we have the 30mm f3.5 macro lens. Definitely not as fast as this one, but it also has its own purposes. And then we have the Zeiss Tuit 32mm f1.8 lens. And really quick, I just want to let you guys know, I went in and when I was buying this lens, I tested it against the Zeiss Tuit. Because I was going to buy the Zeiss Tuit, I thought, well, shit, you know, it's Zeiss glass, why not? But the issue is, the Zeiss Tuit lens, the 32mm, if you guys saw my review on the Tuit 12mm, you saw how it chatters when you're actually trying to autofocus for video. The 32 does the exact same thing, so I skipped it. You know, it just wasn't for me. But this lens, it's very interesting. So, with that being said, you know, for a $450 lens, some of you guys might like this, and some of you guys might hate it. But anyway, let's go out in the field and take a look. So what can I say about this actual lens? The build quality is really good, but it does have one unusual element, and that is actually the front element. It's concave in design, and this is very unusual. I'm wondering if they did this to combat the, the actual vignetting of the lens. In either aspect, it's still a very nice design and seems to work very well. It's a surprisingly lightweight design. It doesn't bear down on the front of the camera at all, but yet extremely good build quality. Alright, so we're going to try to take some landscape images with this lens. And this is where I think the weakness might actually be. Because the lens itself, you know, being a normal lens, if you look at it vertically, it has a concave front element, and I think they do this to actually help with the vignetting on the depth of field, but it could also hurt with the quality of depth of field in landscape mode. So let's give this a try and see what it does. Now this particular image is at f1.8 at 2,000th of a second, and if we just take a look at the image, the center of it is extremely sharp. And you know, there's some ghosting in the bushes because the lens is wide open, and it's hard for any fast lens to not prevent that kind of ghosting. Over here you see some lens flaring, some purple fringing. If we go into the foreground, it's a little soft. More so in the corners, and then as we go up the image, you know, everything else seems to hold up okay. A little bit of purple fringing against the white. That's very common for any lens wide open, especially faster lenses. f2.8. Now, one thing I wanted to let you guys know about too is, even though this is not considered a flat field lens, it is very close to actually being flat field. Okay, so let's zoom in and take a quick look. In the center, very sharp. Still some vignetting on the overall image. We still have some flaring in the corners and some purple fringing right here. The foreground is obviously still out of focus. The background, we still have some purple fringing against the white, which is common. And the background actually looks pretty good. So at f2.8 it's holding up very well. f5.6. Alright, so we'll view this at full screen. Now at 5.6, our vignetting issue pretty much is almost gone. It's still there, and I can see it just because I've been staring at this for so long now, but it's very minor. So, distortion compensation, if I turn it off, again, very minor correction. Looking at all the data on all the lenses that are made so far, specifically for this mount, they all optimize around f5.6. That's like, and what I mean by that is when the corner sharpness is at its highest and when the center sharpness is at its highest. And in this case, I think that's actually the same exact thing that we've seen before. The center is extremely sharp. The trees are really sharp. If we go into the far corners, there's almost no lens flaring at all against the white. Our foreground is almost in focus. It's just the very farthest part of the corners there that are still out of focus. Everything else looks really good, and the purple fringing that we had against the white is almost gone. f11. Now, f11 is another magic number for this lens because the corners on this lens are actually, I don't know why I just clicked out of there. The corners on these lenses, or this particular lens, are very soft almost all the way through. So at f11, this is our first opportunity to have everything in focus. And because the rear element of the lens is so close to the sensor, and because this lens is so optimized for such a short depth of field, it takes f11 to get everything in focus. And unfortunately, that's where the center starts falling out. So if we look at the actual center at 100%, this area right here is probably around 2700 lines of resolution, which is still very acceptable, but at this point, it's not holding all of the detail that we want it to. But what it is doing is matching the corners. So now the corners are starting to hold up. All of our flaring is almost completely gone. But this is all the way at f11. So, typically lenses for this camera body in this area will have everything in focus at this point at f8. So they'll have slightly sharper when everything is all the way in focus, basically. We're shooting an object wide open, and it's got, you can definitely tell that it's in focus, but the depth of field is so short that a lot of it's out of focus. What I wanted to point out, and you don't really see it in this image, I thought you did here, let me scroll across it, is the flaring. And so the thing I notice about this lens that's really unusual, and let me show you in the next image, is that in the foreground, and I think this is actually kind of common with digital coatings that they're doing nowadays, but in the foreground you are going to have red chromatic aberration before the object is in focus. And then after the object is in focus, you're going to have green chromatic aberration. And if you look at the Spiritone logo here, you see the red in the before, and then TON is in focus, and then the E is starting to represent that green flare, and then everything past it has a green flare instead of a red flare. So, you know, it flares a little bit more than I want it to, but not in every situation, only in certain situations. Alright, so here is Cato, and this I thought was really interesting. I shot him wide open, and again, if I zoom into 100 here, if you look at his eyelashes, the red and cyan flaring that are coming off of the eyelashes, and also off of the fur on the areas that are just out of focus, where the area that is in focus, which is right here, doesn't seem to have a problem with those flares coming off of it. But these whiskers out here get really wild, and they almost look psychedelic. Alright, so let's go back in to fit to window. But overall, you know, looking away from the image, it's still a very pleasant depth of field, and the actual blurriness of the areas that are out of focus are extremely pleasant. Now, this is where the lens really shines. I think there must be something in the lens that says look for people, and you know, we'll make this work. So again, this is at f1.8, 6/40th of a second, because we were in some shade. And if we go into 100%, you still see that green flaring, but it fits in with the background. And look at the detail of the edge of the hat and how it flows around with the fabric. And again, there's some green flaring right there, but it's not by any means bad. Over here we're getting some cyan around the ear, but still very clean looking. You know, the detail looks really good. Overall, the actual bokeh blur in that image is very nice. It's very soft. Has a good image quality to it. Okay, so this was a guy at the barbecue, and you know, the softness around him looks really good. Now this was shot at dusk, so you know, it's actually a lot brighter than it actually looks. And if we go in at 100%, the detail is great. You know, it's all the detail is there. You know, check out the stitching on his shirt, and this again is wide open. So this lens just really loves people. I mean, a lot. Okay, this is my friend Judith, and again, this is at ISO 400. The sun is really on the horizon now. It's almost down. Alright, so let's zoom in at 100%, and keep in mind this is also ISO 400, and this is all natural light, but everything looks to be in focus, and the blur behind her is really subtle and nice. Bouncing a flash off of a window behind me, or no, sorry, off the ceiling, and this is bouncing the actual little tiny a6000 flash, and this is when it's almost completely dark outside. So, you know, again, it does really well with the blinds. You know, it's a great depth of field. This lens just really likes people. This was shot at f1.8. Now, any lens struggles with foliage. So, if we zoom in here to 100%, you'll see where this was actually shot at 4,000th of a second, and you'll see where it looks like it's almost out of, like there's some motion blur from some wind, but there wasn't. The issue that I have though is down here towards the bottom, and let me move around here just so you guys can see. We've got the standard, you know, light ghosting and a little bit of flaring, but overall for 1.8 it's still not bad. Let's go down to the very bottom here. Do you see how choppy this looks in this lower area? And right here, those are the areas that are actually supposed to be completely out of focus, and
because it's foliage, it's having a hard time actually blurring that out. And why do I keep saying foliage? Because leaves hold ultraviolet light, and you really see it when you shoot in infrared. But it does actually make a difference in regular lenses every day. So you know, your bokeh blur isn't quite as good when shooting foliage. Okay, that's all I wanted to add to that. Actual depth of field. Now you're going to see a video on this as well, but I wanted to show you this really quick just to kind of give you an idea of how shallow that really is. Now this was shot exactly 3 bricks away from the camera, so each brick is almost a foot. They're just under, I think they're 11 something inches. So, you know, that's roughly 3 feet away. Actually no, those are 8 inches, sorry. So 16 inches away. And again, you know, off in the distance you have this really nice buttery smooth contrast going on, even though this is at ISO 3200. And just to show you guys the TIFF really quick, that way you can actually see what that looks like when it's converted with a noise reduction added to it. It's very smooth, I mean very pleasant. So, you know, it makes this lens be, I don't know, there's a tough decision to make on this lens because it's not a lens that you can use for everything. Okay, this lens, like any other Sony lens, seems to do really good motion tracking and focus tracking. And it seems to hold a focus spot very well on autofocus. And if you notice, there is no real issues with lens flare, meaning that the hood isn't exactly relevant, but you still use it for protection.
Alright, so how is this lens with manual focusing? Okay, right here I have it at f1.8, and it is tricky to get the peak focusing to work when it's wide open. However, if I zoom out and I step it down to f4 and then try manual focusing, it's a lot easier to see. And you can also see the image stabilization actually working in that mode. You can see it kind of slowly bounce up and down. But yeah, at f1.8 it's very hard to manual focus with peak focusing. So you just kind of have to do it by eye. Although it is easier to focus at f1.8 just by your eye because you can see the depth of field so well. So this is our image stabilization test, and over here I've got a 30mm f3.5 macro, and on this one a 35mm f1.8 OSS. So let's see how well the image stabilization actually works in video. Okay, so I don't know if this is really going to be a perfect test because the macro lens is just slightly wider than the 35mm lens, so actually it may be better because usually when it's wider it looks a little bit more stable. So it's not a one-to-one thing, but it'll show us how stable this really is. Okay, so let's just walk around here, and what I'll do is I'll turn these a little bit, seem to focus in. Okay, there we go. Alright, image stabilization. Let's walk around this and look at it. Okay. How about the leaves over here? two cameras that are mounted on one system, one jib, and let's see if the image stabilization really does work or not. Alright, now backwards. You had no idea I could walk backwards, did you? Alright, what do you think? He's busy cleaning himself. Oh my god. Okay, this is a low light test, and this bunny's cleaning himself. This is so cute. Oh, I love it when he does this. Well, maybe not that part. Whoa. Okay, so we're at 30 frames per second right now. And he's doing that little cleaning face thing. Oh my god, that's so cute. Alright, let's check out the raccoon horse. Some slow panning up and down, side to side. Alright. Alright, so what's the final word? This is a very unique lens. It's hard to describe. First off, don't get real excited about the actual optical stabilization. I have a very steady hand, and I also have the 30mm Sigma Art DN lens. And that particular lens I can shoot very clean at 1/10 of a second in single shot mode. With the optical stabilization turned on this camera, I can get to 1/6 of a second. I consider this lens to be an object-oriented lens. What that means is that it's not designed for shooting where everything is in focus. It's simply not designed for that. This is for shooting people. Wedding photographers love this lens. I mean, this is a great lens for that. Event photographers, again, should love this lens. You know, fashion photographers might also be very attracted to this lens. But landscape and architectural photographers and product photographers, not so much. No, this thing actually kind of sucks. The reason why is the center of this lens is extremely sharp. 3100 lines of resolution easily. That's on par with the Zeiss 2 32mm. You know, in the center, they're equally as sharp. The Zeiss 2 32mm and the Sigma Art DN lenses, though, hold up better on the outside corners. So with that being said, this lens is still weird because it's flat field, meaning that there is hardly any barrel distortion at all. It's a perfect flat area. But I think it's the design of this concave element in the front that actually stops the corners from getting really sharp. So, as I said before, you know, on this camera, shooting at f1.8 actually means you're shooting at f2.8 as far as the physical depth of field. And shooting at f2.8 on this camera is the equivalent of shooting at f4. So having that extra bokeh blur quality is actually very nice. And this lens has beautiful bokeh blur. The blur past your objects is really smooth and buttery. It's some of the best that I've actually ever seen. But again, you can't shoot a landscape with everything in focus. That's where it fails miserably. So I am really torn about this lens. I prefer my Nikon AI 35mm f1.4 and my 55mm f1.2 as far as the depth of field over this, but they're not autofocus. This has a very smooth autofocus. It's actually wonderful for video. And so on that note, I'm going to leave you guys with a little bit of pet fun shot with this lens, and I also shot it with a slide, so that way you guys can really enjoy the cinematic effect of this actual lens. And just so you guys know, in this little clip that I'm going to show you, I shot it at ISO 1600 at f1.8, all the way open, all the way through. So you guys have a good day. I hope you really liked this review. I hope this gave you some good insight, and we'll talk to you later. Please like my videos, click on the ads, because that helps me down the road. I'll see you.